Okay, three, two, one. Hello, hello, and welcome along to today's podcast for the Mindful Leadership with my co-host Natasha Rocha and our special guest as well, Maria. And delighted that you've joined us. And Maria, I'd love if you could kick us off with a short introduction, please. That'd be fantastic.
So greetings to each of you and greetings to everyone listening to us. I'm going to actually begin in my traditional language. So Hanik, Kinti Hoshli Teyet Heya Manilhan, Oshimikul Nehiyeyi, Outlohom Itzat Inpian, Ashaklahinan. So greetings, everyone. My Spanish name is Maria Montejo. My traditional name, I have a few of them. The one that my father gave me is Autelohom Itzat, which refers to an actual little bird you can find in our traditional territory, which is known today as Guatemala. We refer to it as Ishim Uleo, which means Ishim, corn, Uleo, the land. So it's the land of corn in Central America. And our traditional territory is known as Shachla. And there's a little bird my dad used to watch growing up that would go to the top of the trees and start to sing. And those were the sounds that the community members would wait for to look for the seeds that would nourish them. And they would follow the little bird. So I'm named after that little bird, which is Autolohom. And then the second part, Itzat, refers to a sharp wisdom or a very direct wisdom. And it was added to my name because alongside my father and my mother, I was also guided and educated and supported by a traditional teacher by the name of Diane Hill, who comes from the Ganigahaga, the Mohawk people of Six Nations. And she asked for that to also be combined to my name because the little bird talks from the spiritual intelligence. So when I speak from my heart, people hear me and then they follow to be nourished. And my words are like little seeds. So I come from the original people of Central America, which are known as the Maya Popti. And Pop means these sacred mats, and Ti means the spoken word. So we were known as the people that would give the word on the sacred mats. And they're part of the Mayan indigenous people of Central America. And I'm also Deer Clan, which has to do with how we understand how we organize as a community. And we use different aspects of nature or animals to keep us in relationship with the natural world. And so happy to be here with all of you and excited to have this conversation.
Absolutely. Welcome. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And I've definitely seen you embody these beautiful names that you carry, and you've definitely planted seeds for me and shared a lot of your wisdom in a lot of the work that we've either done together or conversations that we've had, which is always beautiful. And I always look forward to them. And the amazing thing that you've done in the sense of planting seeds is, in my viewpoint, is you're quite futuristic in creating and planting the seeds for a balanced work life way of living for you and your department. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that, because I think Jon and I are on a mission to really bring in that balance for people and helping people to follow, their passion, their purpose, and that self-care and that self-love aspect of it. And you don't only embody that, but you've actually brought it into your workplace, which is very, very unique. And I was wondering if you'd be able to share your experience and how you got about bringing in the different services that you do to support your department.
Absolutely. So Totem Ganotsa is an Indigenous education and culture facility located physically in downtown Toronto. It's been in operation for 26 years. I've been the manager of it for about 9 years now. And it's part of all the work I do out in the world. It's just one part of it. But as you know, the more like every manager, every individual that takes on a leadership position, they bring in a particular consciousness, and that affects the program. And I believe I came at a time into this particular program when there was already a strong foundation developed. So there was many managers before me and a lot of indigenous and non-indigenous government staff that worked to create this program. And it was developed in the 1990s when there was what is known today as the Oka crisis. And the story behind that is that there was two Ganikahaga, so Mohawk communities, indigenous communities, who had burial sites, and the town of Oka wanted to extend their golf course. And in order to do that, they would have to disturb those burial sites. So the communities stood up for their ancestors, and all of a sudden, it became a very racist, discriminatory, violent encounter, primarily by the non-Indigenous people towards Indigenous community members. A lot of people got hurt. It was a very it was something that a lot of people were paying attention to, and it kind of exposed that there wasn't a lot of awareness around Indigenous people's history, culture, the history of the land that we call Turtle Island, but is known today as Canada. So that kind of exposed a lot of gaps in awareness. And so that brought people together. That conflict brought a whole bunch of people together to just talk about how do we begin to educate non-Indigenous folks, Canadians, and government staff that are having to make decisions about Indigenous communities, but without necessarily having this awareness or education. So a lot of people came together and they built these beautiful culture facilities, and Dodom Ganotsa is one of them. And we came into existence, I believe either 1996 or 1998. And it started with traditional people being brought from different communities and sharing, some lunchtime teachings and information. And so that's how it ran. And Indigenous folks in the city and in the government can access medicine people, healers for support. And that's how it ran for a while. And then when I came in, because I've been raised around so many spiritual people, so many traditional people, and diversity is what makes my heart like sing. So being around a lot of cultures, seeing a lot of different ceremonies, I came in with that awareness, and I started to work towards looking at each healer, each teacher, what was their particular gift. And I started to focus the sessions that they would contribute based on their gifts to give it more of a strong, I guess, frequency. Because when you engage that part of you, that essence that you bring to this world, it just has a much more profound effect. So I started to work like that. But at the same time that I was entering this program, I was still fully engaged in my own personal work and fully engaged with different traditional teachers and medicine people. And so as I was going through that development, that healing, that awareness, engaging with different spiritual modalities, having the opportunity to experience so many different ways in which healing can happen, it also impacted this program because I started to play and get more curious. And as I started to break free more and more from my own limiting beliefs about where healing belongs, or who needs to heal, or all of that started to break apart, and I started to feel more connected to my heart as I kept working. And as I did that, the I guess the people that I wanted to work with started to expand more and more, to the point now where we are in the program, where it's kind of we're focused on just supporting all people, all humans, to be able to engage in a conversation of transformation. And even now at the point where I am, before I used to see it as like, we've gone through difficult experiences and trauma, we need to heal that. But now I'm at a place where I realize, no, it's actually just life. And life is always going to have the good and the not so good. And instead of looking at, we got to heal to get somewhere, we have to start looking at it as it's kind of like a life skill, right? So we need to actually develop the capacity of what it means to be human, because we're always going to go through a process of learning. And I'm at that point now where it's like, it has to become core, and everything that we do is learning how to process your life, which I call the life skill of healing. So I've come a long way from seeing it as like, we have conflict, we need to stop, as opposed to now, which is like, no, we just all need to relearn what it means to process what shows up in our life, and to actually accept that it is going to show up. So it's not a matter of is it or not. It is going to show up. There's going to be conflict and difficulty and pain. And now it's more about building capacity to process and move through life.
Wow. Wow, thank you. And before I forget, I just ate some sesame seeds before you came on. And as you were saying seeds, I was like, there's a sesame seed stuck in my tooth. And every time Natasha was saying seeds as well, I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. So thank you for that seed. And I also just want to thank you for your incredible work. It's not just an inspirational story from one angle, right? You're being able to work with everything that's human at this time and living, and bring people together in such across such diverse groups. And yet I love that you're because it was going to be one of my first questions, some of the biggest challenges, and you're seeing that it's this life journey, this life healing, this integration that we're all part of, all part of this big world, this big same home. But I must admit, almost everything you've just told me is completely new to me. So thank you for both the journey and the education.
Absolutely. I've had the privilege to work with you and a lot of the people that you work with as well, and throughout the different aspects of their journey. And I found that whether it's the support in life or at work, it really is such an honor. And I love that you've already created such a good basis and a foundation that healing or that guidance or that coaching is well received, in that sense that not only do you see the benefit of doing it for yourselves, but so many people that I've had the privilege of working with, and other healers that you have that come through as well, and the talks that you have. Some of them I was like, oh, I so wish I was there. I would attend every talk of any person that you would bring in, because they sound so interesting. But I love that there is the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of wisdom, and the bringing in of unity, through all cultures, through all races, through all departments, which has been really, really, really incredible. And the common thread that I see throughout all those departments and all those people is this willingness to expand and to learn, and like you say, to move through life and to feel things that are happening, and to improve, not only for themselves but for the people that they work with people at home as well. And I found that to be so unique. And I'm hoping that what you've created, the seed that you've planted where you have, will grow into other departments within the organization, but to other companies as well, as the future of really bringing in that balance or that growth or that understanding, that we are our business, we are our work, we are who we are, and there's that level of being brave to be authentically you that I feel you've breathed into that, as well, which is really, really important.
Thank you.
So where do you see business in the next 5-10 years? Do you think more people will grab some of these beautiful tools or services that you offer? Do you see it growing?
When Donam Ganota is an indigenous organization or program at this time, and when you listen to the spiritual leaders within indigenous organizations, they always for many years, since I was a little kid, I've heard them speak about the time of prophecy. So different prophecies that were shared that are now manifesting themselves. So one of the prophecies is the teaching of the eagle and condor, which is a prophecy that talks about the unity of all people led by indigenous communities. And although that prophecy, the name itself may not be found in indigenous communities, there is their own prophecies that will link to that bigger prophecy. So they may not know it like that. They may know it as the eighth fire, or they may know it in a different way according to their people's teachings. But there's talk about this big time of transformation and the potential of great change. And a lot of our spiritual leaders talk about that we're in that right now. And indigenous people from what is known now as the continent of the America, which for our people, we would call it as Abya for Central and South America and Turtle Island for North America. We understand that we're leading that, not because we're better or we're more spiritual, simply because we still retain a sense within ourselves as what it means to be well and living in a holistic way, connected to the natural world and living in harmony. And we haven't given up our way of life despite the amount of pressure. So we're still leading that conversation, but in leading it, we're just kind of waking up a remembrance in people that there is another way to move through this world, and that taking care of ourselves physically, like having a job or financially, shouldn't compromise the other aspects of who we are, and that we actually have other aspects. So there's an emotional self, there's a spiritual self, there's a mental and a physical self. That's a holistic perspective. So we're at that time now where you'll notice that indigenous peoples are being called. People are asking them, what do you understand? What do you believe? And in what's known today as Canada or the north of Turtle Island, it's being done because residential school survivors worked really hard to bring their story, their truth to the forefront. And it opened up space for indigenous perspectives to be brought into spaces normally it wouldn't, which is part of why we work as a program. So that's happening, and I think we're still there, where we're just starting to bring a conversation with a different frequency into spaces where this wasn't happening. And the more and more that happens, what you're going to notice is people starting to want to engage in a deeper conversation about what it means to be human, what are the aspects of what it means to be human, and how do we take care of them. And as right now, it's going to be about how do I develop myself. But eventually, the deeper we go in that conversation, it will eventually lead us to an awareness that you can't without the well-being of the natural world. And I believe it's going to take step by step. Eventually we'll get there. And I think that will be when we start to fully transform work and organizations. And the way that life has been created, like our way of life across the world, we for so long have just believed that this is the way things are. But as indigenous people speak more and more, and the wisdom and incredible truth about our original ways of life begin to be heard, it's going to start to break apart that belief so that we can actually create something that actually sustains life and our well-being. So I think first we're going to see little changes. We're still in the Totem Ganota's one example, and as it takes off, you're going to see more and more of that grow. And you're going to see a lot of people starting to incorporate different energy-based or spiritual-based practices slowly into their organizations. And then slowly it's going to create such a dissonance with the status quo, like spiritually, energetically, it just won't vibe together, that it'll force, I believe, the current way we live to start to actually break apart. And then because people's whole, once you're well, it's hard to tolerate anything that doesn't support that well-being. So I think that's when we're going to really start to see new companies emerge. And people are going to build them based on their own well-being, the well-being of the people that engage with them, and also the well-being of the earth. That's the bigger picture, I believe, which is essentially where indigenous people were, right?
Yeah.
So we had booming economics, we had incredible trade, incredible government processes, but they weren't attacking the natural world, right? There was conflict always, but it wasn't against life. It was actually to support life. So I don't know if that answers it, but that's kind of like where I see things going. But it has to start with indigenous peoples, because we're just leading that conversation. It's like kind of reminding people that there is a different way, like waking that remembrance inside of them.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing it. It just last night I was running a training course that I developed, and it was for a small group. And in it, we did a meditation to travel to like our futures, to see what the world would be like and what we wanted in our lives. And almost everyone, well, what was funny was almost everyone had exactly the same experience, even though we weren't talking verbally. And it was a planet where, in not that many years' time, where at least these pockets of people are coming together, and there's a lot more balance. We saw a lot more trees, and we saw some buildings, but they were very much part of um, the world, the natural world. And we also saw in ourselves this levels of happiness we never thought were possible, and joy that we perhaps some of us have felt when we were children, but as we've grown older, have accepted lower and lower levels of happiness. And that for me was really very profound. It felt like a shift from individual career to, to a more global focus where we're much more interested in everyone else, and that it's not just something that, you know, everyone gets to choose, right? But it's not just something that's going to be exclusive to you. You can live your dream life with the rest of the planet, not just alone, not just be, you know, super rich or super whatever the thing is you think you want at the moment. We can together create a world that really helps support everyone's needs more than. Um, I think that's such a beautiful future that you paint. And I must admit, from my personal naivety of Indigenous people, like here in Scotland, I feel like we have some of those. You know, you can trace back some of our lineage, but our traditions are increasingly smaller and smaller, and our spirituality is very much hidden and often uh, destroyed. And but a lot of it's coming back. There's a lot more interest in it, and it's emerging gradually into more popular culture. But I must admit, when I've worked in global companies and brought teams together from around the world, who I think you mentioned earlier, Maria, like the kind of gifts, like the superpowers of people. When you bring people together from around the world, you create teams, and I'm talking about 8 or 10 people who can achieve things you never thought were possible because they behave as one. They behave as one human race, and everyone is playing to their gifts. And we do things like, you know, every month we would like cook our like traditional dish, or we would do something to celebrate something about our cultures. And food was often a very great way of bringing people together. And I was really fascinated in your work, both in the past and in the future. Like, how do you see us bringing people together physically to experience each other's gifts and our cultures?
So, you know, doing this work, indigenous peoples across the world. But speaking for my people and the people of what is now known as the American continent, we've gone through a lot of pain, a lot of oppression, oftentimes incredibly violent. Me, myself, I was born during a genocide. So I was born as a refugee when my parents had to flee the genocide towards my people. And as I mentioned, as I've done more and more and more and more healing on all of that, which I experienced and my ancestors experienced, always with the intention of creating something for the world from my heart, right? You have to heal all of that. One of the things that our traditional teachers would always talk about is where our teachings came from, and they would talk about it coming from the land, from the natural world, from all the parts of creation were the ones who taught us all that we bring forward in our way of life. So one of the things I did is I sat for a while. We have fasting ceremonies that we have to do where we sit on the land in a particular place for 4 days without food or water, and we do that ideally 4 years in a row. And one of the years that I did that, I sat amongst the trees, and you're not doing anything, you're praying with our traditional medicines, and you're just sitting there for 4 days. And one of the things that I noticed is that all of creation works to support another part of creation. And a long time ago in Europe, there was some kind of belief created around survival of the fittest, right? That everyone's trying to survive. But when you really sit with the natural world, you actually notice that it's like it knows that its life depends on the well-being of another person. And when racism, sexism, classism, all of those discriminatory belief systems were created in this world in order to justify the oppression of indigenous peoples and other peoples across the world, there has to be a part of you that gets shut off in order for a natural part of you, a true essence of you has to get shut off in order for you to uphold those racist or discriminatory belief systems, because it would be too much in contradiction with the truth of who you are. So as I've done this work, I realized that the more people heal and come into themselves, the more that something very natural will start to take over, as natural as creation, the world that we live in, the natural world, which is a true essence. And that essence will automatically illuminate your consciousness to know that we are intricately connected, and your well-being will have a direct effect on my well-being, and that every part of this world, every single part of this world, which we call our mother, the earth, every part of her body sustains another part. She needs to also have holistic wellness. And so knowing that the way I take care of my river, the way I take care of the lake or the ocean in my territory, when I pray, when I do my offerings of gratitude, I know it will benefit the rivers in your land and your space. So across the world right now, primarily because I'm indigenous, I'm able to see the connections that diverse people are doing around the world according to this particular prophecy of the eagle and condor. So more now than ever, you're seeing many, many gatherings of councils coming together to have conversations, to have dialogue. I think that's the first step, is to begin to have dialogue with each other, begin to share what's happened to your people, what's been done to your people, what are the stories of your people. I think that's usually how it begins. What are your experiences? And one of the things that I noticed coming out of these gatherings or council meetings is that you actually start to realize that we're all kind of going through similar experiences. So I was recently in Norway at a conference where I got to speak. And you know, if I've never left my territory and went to Norway, I would never have been able to see people who have blue eyes and blonde hair who are indigenous to those territories, who don't look like me but are indigenous. And when I heard the Sami people talk about their experiences, it's exactly what my people are going through, and their concerns are what my people's concerns are. And automatically you feel this heartfelt connection with each other. And I know that might not seem like such a big deal, but energetically or spiritually, I want you to imagine threads starting to be weaved together again. And those are small examples of how we're starting to build unity, where we're not looking at diversity as something that separates us, but in fact, diversity as related to our relationship to the land and the cultures that emerge, but the oneness that is always present. And it's like it's happening first, I believe, at a spiritual level as we physically engage in spaces with each other, and energetically something is happening. And as an indigenous person, I believe it's actually our mom. I believe it's Mother Earth doing it. I believe she's moving things to prepare us for what she needs to do in order to be well. I think there will be earth changes that come. We've heard that from our elders, but I believe she's trying to shift it in a way where we'll be okay, where all living beings will be okay, but she's just trying to get us to meet her where she is energetically and as a spiritual being. So my belief is she's kind of doing it. She's just making the connections where she needs them to happen. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Jon.
Yeah, it's incredibly resonant. Myself, I was very much a kind of closet spiritualist, I guess you could describe yourself as, since I started meditating in 2017. When I left my corporate job in May, I was still quite isolated. And those last points you're making, I've done nothing but since meet people, including today. I was running back to my home. It's like we are being weaved together, and there's this theme constantly of bringing people back to nature. You know, Natasha and I talk a lot about stress and anxiety and burnout that we see in people and companies, and one of the biggest things that helps people is coming back to being outside, being with nature and connecting with it, like seeing that the birds sing for you and that the trees are living and that everything is there with you and for you and you're there for it. um and yeah, I definitely resonate with this journey of the working with the energy of the land as well, because it feels so powerful. And it brings, for me personally, in the area I live, a lot of the that are not that long ago, we were persecuting people for being witches, and um are like it's still in our healing journey, and a lot of ancient knowledge that has, you know, since been forgotten is coming back in these areas, and it's again all through the land. So thank you for sharing that, and the prophecies are so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely align with the prophecies that have been coming in, because I've been seeing it in the Akashic records for quite a while. And you're absolutely like, I share that and I echo that from what I've been seeing, in the sense of looking at things from a holistic perspective, and that we are at that space where everything is kind of like being shaken up a little bit because it's been so stagnant for such a long time. And the other thing that started coming through that I've noticed from the Akashic records is that one of the things I was told was that the indigenous people carry the ancient knowledge and wisdom of Atlantis, which is the reconnecting to nature. which is absolutely stunning. And for me, when I hear people, Indigenous people coming around and spreading the word and sharing their knowledge and sharing that wisdom, that really excites me, because coming from Africa, we have 11 official languages. But when I grew up, even though we grew up very much in a separation apartheid era, we still had as a basis an Indigenous language that was spoken, whether it was in elementary school, primary school, and then in high school, you took it to a certain level. And we, even as a basis, we learned about how to celebrate all the different, and then we're also very multicultural. And I found that to be so interesting and very, very confusing later on, in the sense of, why do we not celebrate the differences and the uniqueness of each other, rather than really separating us and making us different? Because what makes us different is what makes us super cool, kind of a thing. So that's very interesting, in the sense where the world is at the moment. The pendulum is swinging way too far on the one side, as we're needing to experience, darkness before we know what light is. But I just absolutely love that needing to connect back to nature. I mean, I've just spent a week up in the north of Scotland. I was telling John, I put myself out too fast because I wasn't able to go to Canada. So I went up into the north, like completely digital detox, and I connected into the ley lines. But the other thing that I was saying to John is, I totally forgot, there was some reason when I first got there, I wasn't able to connect to the rivers and to the flowing water. And then after the second day of not being able to meditate, I was like, no, I need to go ask permission from this land to work with it again. And I remembered that from Diane's, one of hers. And I was like, no, I need to go speak to the guardians of the land. So instead of going down to the rivers, I went up into the trees and reconnecting into the trees. And that was one of the most beautiful things. It was really connecting into these beings. And I noticed that, and connecting into the root systems, and reaching out and connecting to every other tree, not only in Scotland and in the UK, but the communication throughout all the lands was so impressive. And having that conversation and feeling connected to everything, it really opened up my heart space, but it also gave me the knowledge on how to connect to the ley lines, the energetic lines that run. And that's some of the work that I went to go and do. And it was so expansive. And interesting aspect that I found as well is, when I did connect to the land of the ley lines, an aspect of past life, perhaps the druid aspect of connecting to nature, came in, and that completely informed, I suppose, the ritual or the ceremony that was connected, not only in connecting to the 4 directions, but connecting into 5 elements, and connecting into the waters, the air, that, like, everything in that. It absolutely, I felt so charged and so open, and I'm so ready to do the work, and I'm so ready to be of service. It just pushed you into that different layer of, how can I really be of service for humanity? And I do think that a lot of the indigenous, whether it's in the Americas or in Europe or in Africa or wherever or around the planet, the knowledge and wisdom needs to surface, because it's been so suppressed. And like you say, it's unnatural, which is why a lot of people their bodies are experiencing burnout. Their bodies are experiencing the stress. Their bodies are saying enough, because I think connecting in on a macro level, I agree with you, the earth is tired. And that's why there's fires, and that's why there's earthquakes, and that's why there's floods. It's that rejuvenation of kind of like, how do I shift the people, the cells that are living on me, which is so important. And I think we're at that shift at the moment in all sectors, in all industries, whether we look at medicine, medical, or whether we look at education, whether we look at government, with whatever it is, private corporations. You're right, it does have to bring in that foundation of the wellness of the people.
Yeah, it's in our prophecies as Indigenous people, and one of the experiences I had, as you know, Natasha, I also got the opportunity to go to Costa Rica. And this wasn't in my awareness until the opportunity showed up. And when we were going to the mountains, I was listening to Boys to Men on my earphones on the bus. And then I felt my heart, I felt this huge wave of emotion. And that usually means I need to pay attention. So I took my earphones off and I was sitting at the back of the bus, everyone's sleeping, and I just put my hand in my heart and I said, okay, what's the information? And I looked at the window and I could see that we were the particular tree where our sacred bird, which is known as the Quetzal, that's where that bird normally is. So we were in Quetzal territory, and the Quetzal is all about the union between the sky and the earth in our heart, and the freedom and the tenderness that comes from that union. It's a communication with the natural world. And that's the prophecy. We're all heading to that relationship, that communication. And so I look at the tree and I start to say, okay, what do I need to do? And as I got off the bus, I was given an opportunity by our host, Costa Rican professors, that gave me an opportunity to go and smoke my pipe on the land there. And as I got to um, the entrance of this beautiful national park, the lady said you wouldn't be able to do ceremony in there because it's conservation area, but you can do it on the side. And that was a huge trigger, but it was a necessary trigger. I don't see triggers as bad, I just see it as necessary. So it's a necessary trigger to push kind of still, even in the connection to the land or conservation, there's still a state or a mainstream tendency to push Indigenous people. But that was the trigger that was necessary because it opened up the ceremony and what the message was that I needed to retrieve. And so I sat on the land, I smoked my pipe, and all these tourists wearing the top uh, hiking clothes you can imagine are all walking by with their cameras, ready to capture the beauty of nature. And I was aware that this wasn't a coincidence. All these parts were helping me to be able to get the message that needed to come forward. And I smoked my pipe and I cried, eh? Because sometimes the opening of that space is so intense that I cried and I let the energy move through me. And the message that came from our mom, the earth, when I sat there with her, was that if we don't connect spiritually to her, that we're not going to make it, because it's not just appreciating nature or sitting in nature, but is realizing her as a living being, and that living being, that life force, is in all of the natural world. And if I were to go up to either one of you or into your own home or space, you would at the very least expect me to be respectful, right? And it's very basic. Like if you were to come to see me, we'd probably exchange gifts or a hug, or we'd build a relationship. So when we still, there's still another deeper connection that has to happen to be able to see her as a living being. That's what she means by connect to me spiritually, that she's a living being and she's deserving of respect, acknowledgement, and that when you walk in the woods, you're entering the space of many living beings. And how would you want to be treated is similar to the questions you need to ask. How do we engage with the natural world? And I think that was a very important message, because as we see more people going to nature, as we see more people engaging spiritually, there's also a responsibility of how we do that.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that message with us. That's absolutely incredible and absolutely spot on. And I hope many people hear that message and many people embody that message. Not only hearing it, but really embodying it and really actioning on that, as well as living it, is important. Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to conclude this podcast. This time has gone by so quickly. We'd love to have you on again. There's so many more questions that I'd like to ask in the sense of, how would you advise somebody starting off in this world to make that change right from the get-go so we get things moving? But perhaps we'll leave that for another time. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you so much for sharing the prophecies and the knowledge and the wisdom and your energy and your time and everything that you do. Has been a complete inspiration. Absolutely.
Yeah, likewise, Maria. Thank you so much. Just an incredible journey you've taken us on, and so much to reflect on. Thank you so much.
Thank you to both of you. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
we'll
you.
conclude today's episode of that. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing everyone again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks. Yeah.